Hi everyone, this is Kelly. Today's bond is with the Janzen family, and in this true crime story, there is no murder or victims, only sadness. Before we begin, please note that this video is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. Some content may be sensitive for certain viewers, so consider this your disclaimer. Finally, don't forget to subscribe. It really helps me out. Thanks for being with me on this journey. The Janzen family home in British Columbia was the kind of place where love seemed to flourish. Laurel, the heart of the household, had created a warm, nurturing environment. Her kitchen always smelled of home-cooked meals, and laughter once filled the halls, mostly because of Emily, the family's radiant light. But on an ordinary May afternoon, in 2015, that warmth would be replaced by silence, a silence so deafening it would haunt the entire community. Emily Janzen had always been exceptional. At just 19, she was more than a daughter. She was a dreamer, a performer, a young woman destined for greatness. At the Chilliwack School of Performing Arts, she was a rising star, both as a student and later as an instructor. Her presence was magnetic, her voice enchanting. Emily wasn't just talented, she was vibrant. She was the kind of person who could make you believe in the beauty of life. But behind her bright smile was a darkness no one could truly comprehend. Emily had been fighting a battle since childhood, one that didn't leave visible scars, but tore her apart from the inside. Chronic migraines had become her invisible enemy. They started as occasional headaches, but grew into an unrelenting torment. Over the years, they robbed Emily of her joy, her independence, and eventually, her dreams. For years, Randy Janzen, her father, watched helplessly as his daughter's life slipped away. Not in an instant, but piece by piece. The girl who once sang with a voice that could silence a crowd now spent her days curled in agony, her nights filled with tears. She had tried everything, medications, therapies, doctors, but nothing worked. The migraines were relentless, and with them came severe depression. Emily, the star, was now a shadow of herself. By the fall of 2014, her pain had escalated to an unimaginable level. Each day became a new form of torture. She could no longer sing, no longer act. Her aspirations of performing on grand stages were now just distant memories. And for Randy, her father, the pain was unbearable to witness. The man who once stood tall as the lead singer of a Vancouver heavy metal band, Marauder, now felt like a broken shell of himself. He poured his emotions into music, but no song could drown out the anguish of watching his daughter suffer. Randy wasn't just a father, he was Emily's protector. He had vowed from the moment she was born to keep her safe, to shield her from harm. But what happens when the harm comes from within? What happens when love isn't enough to save the one you cherish most? It was late April 2015 when Randy began to change. Friends noticed the weight of despair in his voice, the exhaustion in his eyes. He spoke often about Emily's pain, how it consumed her and left the entire family in a state of hopelessness. Those around him could see the cracks forming, but no one could have predicted what was to come. On May 6th, Randy made a decision, one he believed was rooted in love. In his mind, there was no other way to end Emily's suffering. That afternoon, he walked into her room. The girl who had once filled their home with laughter now lay in silence, her face pale, her eyes tired. Randy knelt beside her, tears streaming down his face. Emily didn't say a word. With trembling hands and a heart shattered into a million pieces, Randy picked up the gun he had brought with him. One shot, and her suffering was over. For the first time in years, Emily was free, but Randy's torment didn't end there. He looked at Laurel, his wife of 30 years, the woman who had stood by him through every storm. She had been Emily's rock, the one who held the family together when everything seemed to fall apart. But how could she survive this? How could a mother live with the pain of losing her only child? Randy's mind was clouded with grief and desperation. He convinced himself that he was sparing Laurel from a lifetime of unbearable sorrow. He walked into the kitchen where Laurel was preparing dinner. She looked up at him, her face etched with concern. "I did it," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "She's free now." Before Laurel could respond, Randy raised the gun. In a split second, the love of his life was gone. But Randy's actions didn't stop there. In the days that followed, he was consumed by guilt. He thought of his sister, Shelly, a kind-hearted woman with a quiet life. She had been the family's anchor after their mother's passing the year before, always there to support Randy and his family. Shelly loved Emily like her own, and Randy couldn't bear the thought of her living with the shame of what he had done. 2 days later, Randy drove to Shelly's home. She greeted him with her usual gentle smile, unaware of the storm brewing inside her brother. They sat down for tea, chatting about mundane things, until Randy's tears betrayed him. "I've done something terrible," he confessed. Shelly's face turned pale. Before she could ask, before she could even process his words, Randy acted. One shot, and his sister's gentle soul was gone. By May 7th, Randy was alone. The house that had once been filled with life now felt like a tomb. The weight of his actions pressed down on him, suffocating him. He sat down at his computer and typed out a Facebook post, a chilling confession that would soon shock the world. "Over the last 10 days, I have done some of the worst things I could ever imagine a person doing," the post began. He detailed his love for Emily, his anguish over her suffering, and his belief that he had freed her. He wrote of Laurel, how he couldn't let her endure the pain of losing their daughter. He described Shelly's gentle spirit and how he couldn't let her live with the shame of his actions. And then, with haunting clarity, he apologized to anyone he had hurt. "Rest in peace, my little family. Love, Daddy-O," he wrote. The confession went live on Facebook at 12:19 p.m. Randy's words, raw and haunting, spread like wildfire among his friends and family. At first, many scrolled past it, thinking it was another one of Randy's emotional posts. But as the gravity of his words sank in, shock turned to disbelief, and disbelief to horror. "This can't be real," one friend whispered to herself, rereading the post. Others frantically commented, pleading for Randy to clarify, to say it was all a misunderstanding, or perhaps a cry for help. But there were no replies. As the minutes passed, phones began to ring. Some of Randy's friends called each other in panic, asking if anyone had spoken to him or knew what was happening. "It sounds serious, too serious." Another, too shaken to even speak, dialed the police. The Chilliwack RCMP received the first call just minutes after Randy's post went live. "It's about Randy Janzen," the caller said, her voice trembling. "He's done something horrible. Please, you need to check on him." More calls poured in, each one echoing the same desperate plea. Something terrible had happened, and it wasn't over. By 3:30 p.m., a team of officers descended upon the quiet neighborhood where the Janzen family home stood. Yellow police tape stretched across the driveway, sealing off the once welcoming property. For the next 4 hours, officers tried to establish contact. They called out his name through megaphones, their voices firm but compassionate. "Randy, we know you're in there. Come out peacefully. We can work this out." Inside the home, Randy sat silently, surrounded by the ghosts of what he had done. His mind raced, replaying every moment of the past 10 days. He knew this was the end. He had planned it this way. But the reality of his choices weighed heavier than he had anticipated. Neighbors began to gather outside, their faces a mixture of confusion and fear. Whispers rippled through the crowd as they speculated about what was happening inside the house. "I saw Randy just last week," one woman said, her voice breaking. "He was walking his dog. He seemed fine. This isn't the Randy we know." The tension was palpable as the hours ticked by. Police negotiators attempted to reason with Randy, urging him to surrender, but Randy didn't respond. Just after 7:30 p.m., the standoff took a sudden and dramatic turn. A loud bang shattered the tense silence, followed moments later by another. Neighbors ducked instinctively, their hearts pounding, peering nervously over the police barricade. The bangs were the sound of 2 gas bombs deployed by police in an attempt to flush Randy out of the house. The goal was to force him to surrender without further harm, to himself or anyone else. But instead of stepping outside, Randy made his final move. From out of nowhere, flames erupted from the house, licking up the walls and consuming the roof with terrifying speed. Within minutes, the entire structure was engulfed. The bright orange glow illuminated the night sky, casting eerie shadows over the crowd of onlookers. The gathered neighbors watched in stunned silence as the house, the home that had once been a sanctuary for the Janzen family, was reduced to an inferno. Amid the chaos, a single gunshot rang out from inside the house. The sound was unmistakable, and it sent a chill through everyone who heard it. Randy had made his choice.
2 crime scenes, shootings, a fire, and 4 people believed dead. That's the toll of a terrible tragedy involving a family in the Vancouver area. And in a shocking twist, a Facebook post may have revealed key details of the crime. Greg Rasmussen has the story.
Behind this police tape are some of the answers to a family tragedy that's believed to have ended with the death of a young woman, her mother and aunt. Deaths written about online before the police were notified. Emily Janzen was a gifted 19-year-old musician. Her family lived in this lush residential area of big houses set on large rural properties. Overnight, neighbors described chaos as police stormed a house owned by Emily's father, Randy Janzen.
It was a war zone here. There was a fire coming from the living room area, and it engulfed the house within minutes.
It's believed that several members of one family, including the suspect, are deceased.
Police aren't naming the victims, only saying this house and a second, a half hour away, home to Jansen's sister, are the focus of a murder investigation.
Langley RCMP received information obtained through social media that indicated an Agassiz man had harmed his family members.
Police won't confirm the connection, and there's no proof he wrote it, but this post on Jansen's Facebook page has graphic and chilling details. He describes his daughter Emily and her increasingly difficult struggle with migraine headaches. But then, shockingly, this. I took a gun and shot her in the head, and now she's migraine-free. The post says events unfolded over 10 days, and that after killing his daughter, he shot his wife, Laurel, because a mother should never have heard the news her baby has died. And then the post says 2 days later, he shot his sister, Shelly. I did not want her to have to live with this shame. Today in the neighborhood, shock.
I just thought it was crazy bizarre that a dad would actually write that after all this had transpired.
Raymond Norfolk worked for the last 8 years with Randy Janzen at a sawmill.
He was an awesome guy, never did nothing wrong to his daughter, that's for sure.
He says Janzen often talked about the struggles his daughter was having with migraines and how they had trouble getting help from the medical system.
They kept getting turned away, so he just kept on getting worse and worse and worse, and then that was it.
But he says he never suspected it could come to this. Greg Rasmussen, CBC News.
As firefighters worked to contain the blaze, police officers and neighbors could only watch in stunned silence. The flames raged uncontrollably for hours, consuming the Janzen family home until it was reduced to little more than smoldering rubble. But the fire's destruction was only the beginning of the ordeal. The intensity of the heat and the structural instability of the ruins made it impossible for anyone to enter the house for days. For 4 long days, the wreckage stood as a silent monument to the tragedy, shrouded in smoke and ash. The once vibrant family home was now a grim reminder of the horrors that had unfolded there. Police maintained a perimeter, knowing that somewhere within the charred remains lay the answers and the devastating truth. When it was finally deemed safe to enter, investigators combed through the debris. It didn't take long for their worst fears to be confirmed. Hidden beneath layers of ash and fallen beams, they found the bodies of Randy's family, Emily, Laurel, exactly as he had described in his chilling Facebook post. Each discovery was another blow to the officers and the community alike. Randy's body was also found among the ruins. Investigators confirmed what they had suspected. He had taken his own life before the flames consumed the home. The fire, likely set by Randy himself, was his final act, a destructive curtain closing on the horrifying sequence of events. The tragedy that began with a father's anguish over his daughter's pain had reached its devastating and irreversible conclusion. For the community, the reality was almost too much to bear. How could this happen? How could a man so loving, so devoted to his family, commit such unimaginable acts? Randy's Facebook post became the subject of widespread scrutiny in the days that followed. It was analyzed, discussed, and debated by everyone who read it. Some saw it as a desperate cry from a broken man who believed he was sparing his family from a life of pain. Others viewed it as a chilling window into a mind overcome by despair. Was this born of love, madness, or something far more complex? For those closest to the Janzens, there were no answers, only loss. Emily, once a beacon of talent and promise, was gone. Laurel, the family's rock, was silenced forever. Shelly, the gentle, kind-hearted sister, had been taken too soon. And Randy, the man who had loved them all fiercely, had left behind only ashes and questions. Leave us your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Randy was suffering from undetected depression, or was it simply an irrational thought that led to this tragic incident? Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe for more true crime stories. See you in the next video.